The government has agreed a new trade deal with Australia, brand new, and it's a big moment, I guess. Since Brexit, we've signed quite a few other trade treaties, but they've largely been the result of just copying and pasting ones that already existed. This one's significant because it has been developed from scratch. In a statement, Boris Johnson said, "Today marks a new dawn in the UK's relationship with Australia, underpinned by our shared history and common values. The trade deal gives UK and Australian businesses easier access to each other's markets." Downing Street said the agreement would make it easier for Britain to sell cars, Scotch whisky, biscuits and ceramics to Australia. But it is already proving controversial. Trade deals are supposed to make us all richer. This one does, but only very slightly, according to official figures. And British farmers warn that cheaper food imports could put them out of business, undermine animal welfare and affect the look of the countryside. Maybe you love the sound of the trade deal, or perhaps you're a farmer who says, "This is not why I voted for Brexit." Do email vine@bbc.co.uk with your phone number. Just jot it down so we can get back to you. Text us 88291. We'll speak to Matthew Lesh, who's Australian and is from the Adam Smith Institute, and Paul Westaway, a beef farmer from Dimmock in Gloucestershire. You go first, Paul. Is this one that farmers are feeling a little bit threatened by?
Morning, Jeremy. Thanks for your time. Yes,
Hi.
I think we are. I think we're a little bit. I know threaten's the right word. I think a little bit disappointed. I mean, but we're not afraid to compete on the world stage. We have a great product, but we'd like the rules to be the same. And at every stage, we've been promised that animal welfare and all the things that we have to do to make British food the best in the world will not be compromised. And that appears to have been thrown out the window, and that's a real worry for us.
Give us some specifics there.
So we have, and you'll remember the dark days of foot and mouth and BSE, Jeremy. We have the best ID and traceability system in the world. We have more carbon footprinting. We do more work on the environment than almost any other country in the world. We have the highest animal welfare standards. That's accepted by pretty well any other country in the world. And we don't mind competing, and I have no issue competing with Australian beef and pork and lamb, Jeremy. But I just like it to be a fair competition, and then the consumer and the product will win out. The issue is that the standards in other countries aren't the same as ours, and that just seems terribly unfair.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and it comes back again and again, Matthew Lesh, doesn't it? That when you do a trade deal with somebody, if their rules aren't the same as ours, we get undercut by them.
Look, Jeremy, I think you're right, and you're open to say that this is quite an extraordinary opportunity, and that there are lots of benefits for consumers and producers across a wide variety of industries. What I think is key on this point about farming standards is that Australia does have extremely high food quality standards as well as animal welfare standards. Australia operates a separate supply chain when it comes to exporting into the EU and the UK, which ensures that Australia has to follow precisely what the UK standards are. I think it's totally nonsense. I think anyone who's been to Australia, any of your listeners or who knows someone in Australia can talk about the quality of Australian produce, knows that it's comparable to the UK, and that it's complete nonsense that British farmers can't compete. I actually think British farmers can compete globally, and we should believe in their ability, even if there is a little bit more Australian beef that comes into the UK market.
But we've got a difference of fact here, Paul, haven't we? Because essentially your point, Paul, is that the regulations you are under in the UK are more expensive to comply with than the ones Australian farmers are under. Is that right, Paul?
That's absolutely correct. And actually, I take Adam's point very well. I don't mind competing. And I think there is some opportunity for British farmers here as well, because I'd love to be selling my beef in Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane. And I think that it does go both ways. But let's do it fairly. And let's make sure that we're talking about eggs and apples. But and at the minute, we're not.
Matthew?
Well, I mean, quite frankly, we are. I just don't know what he's talking about in terms of when you say Australia doesn't have high standards. And it's not going to be exactly the same in every field all the time, but it is comparable global standards. Australia follows the international standards when it comes to animal welfare and has high rankings on that, and follows international standards when it comes to food safety. So it is a high standard deal. Also point out the government said that there's going to be a 15-year transition period. Now, for me, I think that's a bit long, but I think that does give plenty of time to farmers to adjust to any more competition coming into the market. And I'd also like to spend a little bit more time kind of thinking and talking about what the benefits are for UK producers.
Well, go on. Yes, tell us what you think it is.
Well, be it Scotch whisky, the 5% tariff that currently exists in Australia is being abolished. Be it British cars, again, there's a tariff that's being abolished. There's huge opportunities there. There's also opportunities for young people like myself who want to live and work across countries because they're going to be reducing the barriers to mobility and movement between the countries.
British biscuits as well, I gather. We mustn't miss them out, Matthew.
Of course, and my favourite Tim Tams will hopefully be on supermarket shelves across the UK, as well as cheaper wine for Brits as well.
Is it possible, Paul, that this is bad for British beef farmers but good for everyone else?
Well, the straight answer, I mean, we haven't seen all the detail because I think it was only agreed over supper last night. We need to know that. And there are always ups and downs. And as farmers, we have no issue with that at all. And Matthew makes a good point. It does go both ways. Our issue is this the first trade deal as well, Jeremy? And if we open up Pandora's box, and I agree, I have many good Australian farmer friends, and we're actually using Australian Aberdeen Angus genetics here on the farm in Gloucestershire. I have no issue with that at all. I just want a fair playing ground. And as long as we have that, yeah, there are opportunities for other things, and I enjoy biscuits and Scotch whisky, same as everybody else.
But it sounds like, Paul, every time we hear about a trade deal, it turns out to be bad for our farmers, and I guess the reason for that is that it is in your interest, and I don't say that with any side at all, that you grow British crops and British beef for British people to eat from your farms, right?
Exactly right, and it just and our issue is not with Australian farmers as at all. Our issue is with there's been minister after minister been on your programme, Jeremy, and Andrew Marr, and lots of other BBC programmes, and have all promised no drop in welfare standards, no changes, all this, that and the other. And here we are, the very first deal, the first one with free trade, and that all seems to have disappeared. And lots of us that were potentially even pro or anti-Brexit, it doesn't matter. It appears that the farmers have just been forgotten here, and we just don't want to open Pandora's box.
Matthew, is the unspoken thing here that farmers all over the country are really missing the subsidies that came with being in the EU?
Well, of course, there is a replacement subsidy regime, and the UK farmers already have to compete with tariff and quota-free trade from across all 27 EU countries, and therefore are very capable of competing globally, as well as thinking about what the opportunities are outside of the EU, and particularly with the kind of growing markets across the Asia Pacific, where most of their kind of Australian exports do end up going to. I just don't take the point, and I honestly don't think we have any detail in terms of where Australia isn't up to standards. I think if you speak to any Australian, the quality of the food is extremely high. The food safety standards are high. The animal welfare standards are high, and it's total nonsense to say that they're not equivalent. And I just don't think that British farmers have been sold out whatsoever. I think this is a good deal for British farmers, just like it is for everyone else.
Thank you very much, Matthew Lesh, Australian from the Adam Smith Institute. Paul Westaway, beef farmer from Dimmock in Gloucester.